In the shadows of the Dominion, two worlds collide, the savage VIP Dakar and the cold, cunning Calidus temples of the Officio Assassinorum. Their operatives move like ghosts through the tangled web of a rigid knightly hierarchy, charged with a deadly mission to remove a rebel leader without leaving a trace and place a loyal imperial puppet on the throne. The stakes couldn't be higher. Every victory on the imperial fronts hangs by a thread, all resting on whether these assassins can finish their grim task before disaster erupts. For over 100 centuries, the Emperor has sat motionless upon the golden throne of Terra. He is the master of mankind. Through the might of his countless armies, millions of worlds stand firm against the encroaching darkness. But the truth is grim. He is a rotting husk, a half-dead ruler of the Imperium. His life clings on only by the miracles of the dark age of technology, sustained by an endless sacrifice, 1,000 souls offered to him every single day. To be human in these times is to be one among countless billions to live under the harshest, bloodiest regime ever known, caught in the endless storm of war and slaughter. Around you, screams of agony fade beneath the hungry laughter of dark gods, echoing through the ruins of a dying galaxy. This is a bleak, terrible age, a time when comfort and hope are all but lost. Forget the power of technology and science. Forget the promises of progress and growth. Forget what it means to be human, to feel compassion. There is no peace among the stars, only endless war, lurking in the darkness of the distant future. Divine sanction. When the God Emperor calls men to die, it is not to feed his glory. Our Emperor is no vain God. He asks some to perish, so that others may live. The confessor gripped the balcony's railing, its cold white marble hidden beneath a drape of velvet. His fingers clenched so tight the fabric creased beneath them. The shepherd fell silent, his gaze sweeping over the crowd gathered in St. Lucretia's Square. Faces turned toward the balcony of the apostolic fortress days. They swayed and sang, fingers counting prayer beads, banners waving proudly, each bearing the mark of their manufactorum or distant homeland. The throng stretched across every avenue, and those standing at the back no longer looked like people, but bullets pouring endlessly onto an ammunition factory's conveyor belt. They had come to hear the new revelation, and they would receive it. The view from the days warped, a lone servo skull, one among hundreds buzzing like dragonflies over the crowd, darted dangerously close to the triple-layered force shield. Emperor! The confessor cried, arms thrown wide, face lifted to the sky. The most holy and revered Emperor demands that we give our lives, not merely for him, but for all of humanity. Titius Velso spoke, standing just behind the confessor, careful to stay out of the crowd's sight. But for all of humanity. The confessor swept his hand wide, as if embracing every soul gathered below. The emphasis was clever, Velso thought, casually mimicking the confessor's gesture. It sounded more natural, yet somewhat unorthodox. Most preachers would stress humanity, highlighting the primacy of the human race. But all was a call to the collective. The shepherd lowered his hands and moved his jaw as if lost in thought. Does the Emperor not command use that we exalt ourselves, our society, and our brotherhood? Velso finished, carefully splitting the word brotherhood into two distinct syllables. As he spoke, he raised his right hand, fingers curling as if lifting a tall wine glass. The confessor had done the same just before him. Hold steady, Titius thought. 1, 2, 3. The confessor unclenched his fingers, quickly lowering his hand, then shrugged, as if realizing had gone too far. A subtle show of restraint, a flicker of humility, a touch of humanity, a cunning, theatrical pause before the hammer's final blow. For what does the Emperor demand of his subjects? Velso intoned in perfect unison with the CONFESSOR. If not the establishment of the highest good. Finished confessor Tusol Ilcinder. The crowd before them erupted, hearing the new revelation. The faithful made the sign of the Aquila, lifting their children higher, yearning for the blessing. But their cheers were drowned out by a single, chilling sound, the crackle of fire from execution squads. Not all believed in the revelation. "Do what I told you to quit this," Maskelras sneered, her brow furrowing as the lattice of dueling scars twisted across her face. "We already have one Lord of Holiness. We don't need a second." "The preacher must know how the performer will deliver the sermon," Velso replied, nervously tugging at the embroidered sleeve of his robe. "Our master. Well, he is a skilled master, isn't he? I have to work harder to keep pace with him, just as you must strive to keep him alive." Titius paused. "By the way, how's the situation?" He glanced over their shoulders, suppressing a sly grin. Are the killers hiding here, in this heated room, or is the real threat out there in the cold? The mercenary snorted, resting her hand on the curved hilt of a power rapier hanging at her hip. "I'll go check the perimeter soon, if you must deprive us of your company." Velso shook his head, nodding toward the two massive figures chained in the outer corridor, backs turned to the room. "When you leave, close the doors. No one likes the sight of those monsters. They're here to protect him. Doubt they'll keep him safe if someone blocks their path. The confessor doesn't like their smell." The head of the apostolic guard clenched her jaw, pondering, then snapped back. "Then you close it yourself." Rask strode out swiftly, her embroidered half-cloak tossed over her shoulder, ready to draw her rapier at a moment's notice. "Keep Lenina and Taurus on standby," she called over to the guards standing by the chained figures. "Standard watch protocol. Sensors at maximum." Rolling his eyes, Velso followed her to the door. He shut one of the heavy wooden panels, then the other, avoiding looking at the two monstrosities. Still, he saw their metal feet sinking deep into the woven carpet. He breathed in the stench of human waste, blood, and funeral oil, emanating from their unwilling pilots. One of the constructs had leaked, staining the corridor floor. Velso locked the doors behind him, leaving the confessor alone with the preacher. Sycoraxa turned back to the confessor, her thoughts drifting to how easy it was to play the part of arrogant men. It was the first lesson at the Calidus Temple. Take on the face of someone unpleasant, and no one will notice you until the Emperor rises again. Months of patient work had brought her this close. Wearing a male face and form, Sycoraxa had arrived in the city posing as a worker from the Prometheum plants. She settled into a blockhouse dormitory, letting her long red hair grow out, her body softening, becoming alluring. In her female guise, she took a job serving at a tavern frequented by apostolic fighters and brought one of them back to her living module. A girl and a guard had entered, but only the guard left. What followed was far from easy. The apostolic fighters stuck together, many of them former Militarium soldiers who had deserted after learning of the new revelation. Their bonds ran deep, impossible to replicate. The city of Viridian simmered with tension. After curfew, the streets filled with enemies of the revelation, building barricades and hurling bottles filled with Prometheum fire. Each night, the apostolic guard responded with shock maces and choking gas. In such brutal times, it was no surprise when a man suddenly became withdrawn and distant. That was the mask Sycoraxa chose to wear. Compared to that, Velso, the preacher, was no challenge, arrogant and proud, friendless by choice. Titius fancied himself extraordinary, but beyond mediocre rhetoric, there was little to imitate. Confessor Ilsander, however, was a different matter. He possessed rare eloquence, which is why Sycoraxa removed Velso and took his place. Her closeness to the confessor allowed her to study him meticulously, giving the agent insight into Ilsander's two-faced nature. In 3 months here, she caught sight of the Tau delegation only once. The door was left ajar a moment longer than necessary, and inside, she glimpsed flat, gray-blue faces with cunning golden eyes. The key sign, the marker that the time was near. Sycoraxa once again felt herself as a woman, returning to her true self rather than the male body shed inhabited these past 3 months. Her training had been so deep, so intense, that during the longest missions her mask would take over her mind, while her true self dissolved into the dark waters of her subconscious, but that time had passed. Today marked the climax of months of covert operations. Her investigations were complete. The confessor finished blessing the crowd, kissed the Emperor's skull emblazoned on his robes, and returned to the chamber. "All went well, Brother Velso," he said. The shepherd's cheeks flushed pink from the cold. "An excellent performance," Sycoraxa said. She whistled, and the writing desk, scuttling on spider-like legs, brought Ilsander a decanter of spiced wine and a crystal goblet. "You should be proud of yourself. Save your praise for the Emperor," Ilsander replied, pouring himself a generous measure. The sermons left him thirsty. "I am but his instrument." "In that case," Sycoraxa took a comms cassette from the walking desk. "Lady Faleska is now your tool. The Prometheum Guild has taken your side and accepted the new revelation. Praise be to him." Ilsander smiled. "Our planetary absolution continues. If the Emperor guides us, other industrial magnates will follow suit. We should thank them for their support, for their negligence." Sycoraxa tugged at her robe sleeve, feeling the poison needle hidden there. "Revolutions are always the same, aren't they?" She continued. People have problems, glaring problems, needs that those in power either ignore or claim they can't or won't meet. That breeds a crisis of authority and paves the way for people like us. My dear brother Velso, the people heard our new revelation. That's why they took to the streets. They took to the streets because they are hungry and powerless, Sycoraxa corrected. If the industrial magnates had shared with them under the old regime, the people wouldn't have accepted the revelation so easily. Ilsander scowled angrily, staring at the preacher. For a moment, Sycoraxa feared Shed pushed too hard, but then his fury faded, replaced by a sharp laugh. Of course. Yes, you're right, brother. Feed the belly, feed the soul. I think it's time we spoke frankly, Sycoraxa said. We're partners in this new revelation, aren't we? I need to know what the Tau offered you and what you agreed to. Because when I meet them, the Xenos will expect me to be fully briefed, she thought. Honestly, brother, I don't know what you're talking about. I only want my share, Sycoraxa assured him. And to tailor my speeches to better serve your goals. Need to soften the ground with words? Smoothly introduce the doctrine of the Xenos? Encourage the people to accept vassalage in their empire. Ilsander lingered over his goblet, studying her mask with wide eyes rimmed in red. Meanwhile, Sycoraxa was already deciding where to plunge the needle. The left eye, she concluded, at a downward angle, straight into the brainstem, to cut off the nerves controlling breath and heartbeat. Something like that, Ilsander said. I'll become governor of the sector. And still preach, not the fossilized dogmas of the theologians, but whatever I choose. Life here would improve. For everyone, including us. Sycoraxa hid her hands in the wide sleeves of her robe, palmed the poison needle, and readied herself. Seems they have a phrase for this kind of situation. Yes, the confessor said, all for the higher GA. His head exploded. Ilsander's face dissolved into a cloud of blood. Gray matter splattered across the centuries-old tapestry. A shard of Skull's or Sycoraxa's cheek. She dropped low, diving beneath the massive writing desk. The priest's body collapsed, his mutilated head thudding weightily against the marble table's corner. A sniper. Unlikely. The apostolic fortress was guarded by counter-snipers, assassin servitors, and a sensor network sprawling over 1.5 kilometers. Some kind of intracranial detonator, installed by Xenos for emergencies. Fixing a monocular to her eye, she extended a portable picked capture device beyond the desk's edge. No one. Sycoraxa waited, the thick blood soaked into the carpet. Would she still complete the mission? She had been ordered to study the confessor, eliminate him, and assume his identity. Buy time with the Tau. Keep preaching. Fuel the uprising, so Assassinorum and the Inquisition would know which industrial magnates remained loyal. So the servo skulls in the square could still scan faces in the crowd, gathering evidence for the coming purges. Now everything was more complicated. She had a cleaning kit, but far more blood had spilled than expected. And if a sniper really did fire, she'd be stepping into the line of fire by replacing the confessor. Ducking behind the walking desk, she shifted her view. Mentally tracing vectors, if Ilsander was shot, the bullet or beam must have pierced the curtain. There it was, a tear in the velvet. Sycoraxa slipped across the room, pressed to the wall, and gently pulled aside the heavy drape. And cursed! A hole gaped in the stonework, as if drilled by a precise bit. She slipped a finger inside, feeling smooth walls. Too sharp an angle. Impossible trajectory. No suitable buildings in range, except maybe a speeder. Slowly inching to the window, she peered through her scope. Only the Tower of St. Gonorilla, closed for repairs after the earthquake 14 years ago. A dangerously unstable structure. And 3 kilometers away. So the shot came from 3,000 meters, without direct line of sight. Somehow the bullet pierced the fortress reflecting shield, which shifted every half second. The channel was blasted through in stages, signs of Melta detonations. Only a marksman trained and equipped by the Vindicare Temple could pull off such a shot. Had I wasted too much time, and they sent another operative? Sycoraxa wondered. Unlikely. I report regularly. Is the shooter still there? A traitor agent? No time to think. She had orders and mere seconds to fulfill them. There was no point in hiding. If the sniper wanted her, there was nothing to be done. So the agent dropped to her knees beside the confessor and whistled for the desk. It scuttled forward uncertainly over the thick carpet. Sycoraxa clicked the lock, and the secret compartment slid open silently. Inside lay a metal briefcase for documents and a black zip pouch. She tore off the preacher's robe and stuffed it into the hidden compartment. Her hand moved to the top of her thigh, rolling up the pant leg of her Syntec leather jumpsuit, searching for the subcutaneous polymorphin injector. Her fingers brushed something unnatural, a hard lump, like a tumor. The agent twisted the mass, cocking the device. A button popped out, stretching her skin like a tent. She studied the confessor's face and realized she'd have to gain some weight. Taking a deep breath, she cleared her mind. This would hurt like hell. No training could prepare her for this. 3, 2, 1. The polymorphin surged into her bloodstream. A tremor swept through her body. Small, controlled seizures. Pain rolled over her like crushing ocean pressure. Beads of sweat formed on her black Syntec suit. Normally, Sycoraxa could switch bodies with ease. But when the physical differences were stark, like the lanky, stick-thin Velso and the stocky Ilsander, she had to enter a transitional state first. She became genderless, faceless, more like a rough-hewn statue than a living being. She felt her nose sink into her face until only the holes remained. Her brow ridges smoothed out, cheeks flattened, lips thinned, clenched teeth shifted in her mouth. Blood vessels receded deep beneath ash-gray skin. Velso's short-cropped hair fell away, making room for replacement. She was halfway there, in her most malleable form. Sycoraxa grabbed the black pouch from the secret compartment, unzipped it, and spread its contents out, like a butterfly for inspection. A hermetic body bag made of black plastic, with a valve at one end. Phosphor aerosol to dissolve clothing and flesh inside. Nano gobblers for blood. A sewing pistol to repair the target's clothes. Now with the transformation. Focusing, the agent held her breath. She imagined the rustle of trees from her homeworld. But instead, came a click. The door handle. Sycoraxa realized she hadn't locked the door because of the damn sniper. She stood framed in a rectangle of light, a broad-shouldered shadow falling over her. Twisting, Sycoraxa drew the document briefcase from the desk. In the doorway stood Rask, her scarred face a mask of shock and fury. The mercenary was already raising her shortened lost carbine. The agent threw herself to the floor, using the briefcase as cover. Curling into a tight ball, she rolled behind Ilsander's massive marble desk. Laser blasts shredded the carpet and riddled the confessor's body with holes. Pressing her back to the desk, Sycoraxa glanced left. Small tongues of flame smoldered on the blood-stained fabric. A scorch mark smoked on the briefcase. The case had deflected a laser beam. Just a little more, and clicking the locks, she opened the case, revealing hard metal nestled in soft velvet. Inside lay bracers, a pistol with a thick, rounded barrel filled with emerald green gas, a dismantled blade, and a power pack with straps and coiled cables. Would she have time to prepare her gear? Another burst slammed into the marble desk, scattering charred papers across the room. Golden cherub-faced pocket watches tumbled to the floor nearby. Crosspoint 1 to weapons. Rask shouted. Sycoraxa heard the Shrillvox speed warning. Code Vermilion. We've cornered the assassin. Just as she was about to toss the briefcase aside, grab a watch as an improvised weapon, and close on the mercenary, Rask barked out. Damn Tau killed him. Sycoraxa hesitated. Seeing her in a transitional state, Rask assumed she was a foreign assassin. That could work in her favor. Very well. But to keep that chance, she couldn't die. Cease fire. Sycoraxa called out, mimicking an accent. I surrender. Her assassin skin gray and tightening around her eyes, mouth widening. You said you had a peaceful delegation, Rask sneered. We did, Sycoraxa lied with practiced ease. But he succumbed to fanaticism. Called me a vile Xenos. Attacked me. I had no choice but to defend myself. Silence fell. With swift, practiced motions, Sycoraxa activated a portable force device, strapping it between her shoulder blades. She grabbed a neuroshredder, plugged in the cable, pressed the activation room, and watched miniature lightning spiral through the gas inside the crystal prism. How did you get in here? Where's the preacher? Sycoraxa answered with gunfire, wild, desperate, and blind. Firing from behind the massive desk, she aimed only to buy time. The neuroshredder's blast stuffed her ears. A cone of crackling Empyrean energy, ready to sever and block nerve pathways, rushed through the room like a shockwave. She heard Rask choke, stumble, either grazed or protected by some psychic shield. Otherwise, she would have dropped instantly. For the greater good, Sycoraxa intoned loudly, adding conviction. Setting down the neuroshredder, she began assembling a segmented phase blade, locking the modules, attaching the power pack, snapping the whole together on her bracers. Then came the command she'd been waiting for, the activation code word. Gonorilla Sanctus. A howl rose in the corridor. Saws spun. Pistons rumbled after a fuel injection. The foul stench of sweat, mixed with medicine, filled the air, the unmistakable smell of an addict overdosing on a single shot. Sycoraxa dropped into a low stance, ready to move. The penitent machines burst into the room. The first slammed the wounded Rast to the ground, heedless of everything but its target. This was Lenina, a massive silhouette framed in the doorway, smoke from its smoldering forge tubes blackening the ceiling frescoes. Lenina was named after the heretic woman who once wore the pointed hood, its flaps crudely stitched to her cheeks. Red fabric framed a mouthful of brown teeth and translucent gums. No holes were cut in the hood for eyes. None were needed. The penitent machine destroyed everything in its path. Its exoskeleton swung long, ape-like arms as it closed in on the assassin. Sycoraxa wasn't sure whether the woman controlled the walker or the other way around. She wondered what terrible crime had condemned Lenina to such a fate, then decided she didn't care. Ending such a life was mercy, cruel, but mercy nonetheless. Dodging a swing of the saw, Sycoraxa flipped backward, landing on a soft chair, then sprang up again and unleashed her neuroshredder mid-jump. Lightning crackled inside the charging chamber. Another invisible pulse tore through the air, boiling away the religious paint on Lenina's skin, incinerating the purity seals. The machine did not stop. Penitent machines were monstrous creations, not just weapons, but torture devices. Though the prisoner's nerves had been shredded, the exoskeleton would continue its slaughter, even with a lifeless pilot inside. Landing, Sycoraxa veered aside, narrowly dodging Lenina. The machine, still charging forward blindly, crushed the priest's corpse it was designed to protect. Now, without purpose or control, the half-dead walker barreled on, smashing everything in its path. It slammed into the confessor's wooden throne, shattering it into gilded splinters. It saw screech as it cut through the legs of the walking desk. A massive metal arm swung down, and Sycoraxa dove beneath it. Behind her came the crackle of overload. The walker struck the triple-layered force shield and shorted it out. The air filled with the stench of burning flesh and molten metal. Cries erupted from the crowd praying below. The towering exoskeleton toppled over the balcony railing. The force field struggled to recover from the short circuit, but to no avail. They only flickered erratically, bathing the room in harsh white flashes that made every movement seem jerky and unnatural. Into the room lumbered Taurus, prying open the doorway with a massive claw as it squeezed inside. Flash! The pilot inside bent backward, a thick wrist-sized tube in his eyes leaking purple fluid. The exoskeleton's arms rose threateningly. Flash! A chain blade, no smaller than a tank cannon, descended upon the assassin. Flash! Leaping over the penitent machine, Sycoraxa aimed her neuroshredder point blank and pulled the trigger. Flash! Nothing. Only now did she notice the power cable dangling, severed when she dove beneath Lenina's sweeping strike. Sycoraxa saw Taurus swinging the chain blade backward. Flash! She dodged. The weapon passed so close, the air trembled against the back of her head. Flipping over the desk, she crouched low and took cover on the other side. Only light and sound remained in the room. The faulty refractor fields hissed and sparked intermittently. The chain blade howled, and the claw scraped the marble with a harsh metallic grind. Only the penitent machine's blind stubbornness saved the agent, its drive to smash through the desk rather than circumvent it. The chain blade struck stone. The desk's corner broke away. Each diagonal blow sent wide orange fans of sparks flying, piercing shrieks tearing at eardrums. The stench of molten metal and heated marble crawled into her still-flattened nostrils. Jagged teeth flew off the chain blade, ricocheting off walls and the high ceiling, falling on Sycoraxa like wet snow. Crouched low, she slashed at the penitent machine with her phase blade whenever she could. She knew no matter how much damage she dealt, at least judging by the flickering light, it was only superficial. She was doomed. She wouldn't get close enough for a lethal strike. When a penitent machine goes hand-to-hand, no one can match it. The shattered desk began to give way. Taurus braced itself, gripping the edge with its claw. piercing the cherub skull faces supporting the tabletop, then slashed down with its roaring chain blade from above. Teeth bit into the floor to Sycorax's right, spraying wood chips and carpet fibers. Taurus yanked the blade free. The agent rolled right, and the weapon plunged deep into the spot where the Calidus had just been. Sycorax gasped. The teeth tore through her jumpsuit, ripping a finger-width wound on her leg. Hot blood oozed from her thigh, dripping where her knee touched the floor, staining the carpet. Then she spotted the phosphor aerosol, a canister of smokeless chemical for dissolving bodies and compromising clothing. It lay within reach, knocked aside during the relentless assault of the penitent machine. Sycoraxa grabbed the can, popped the top, and sprayed it at the sneering face of Taurus pilot, whose eyes were impaled by tubes. Flash! The aerosol sprayed in a cone, bathing the penitent. Flash! Skin bubbled. Tubes burst. A pastel-colored chemical cocktail ran down the man's face like a veil of tears. Flash! The auto-targeting optics blackened. Evasion protocols kicked in. The penitent machine rocked backward. Flash! Sycoraxa pushed off the desk and leapt into the air, raising her phase blade for a strike. Flash! The blade plunged into Taurus pilot's head. Sycoraxa clung to the walker like a rider on a grox, delivering blow after blow. She severed nerve cables, pierced optic lenses, shattered hydraulics, crushed chemical vials. She stabbed relentlessly, the phase blade flickering in and out of reality, piercing the monstrous fusion of machine and flesh. She drove the weapon so deep, her clenched fist bruised against cold metal, so deep the blade's tip emerged from the penitent machine's back. The Calidus kept stabbing. Taurus swung its massive exoskeletal arms, but the screaming teeth couldn't reach the assassin. Penitent machines were deliberately built, so their pilots couldn't end their torment by killing themselves. Sycoraxa fell with Taurus, still astride its massive frame. The huge machine cracked the lacquered wooden floor, exposing ugly scar concrete beneath. She clenched and unclenched her wounded hand, the sword strapped to her wrist, feeling the broken knuckles brush against her glove. For a moment, she caught her breath, then spotted movement and leapt back into a fighting stance. Rask stood before her, blade raised in a duelist's guard. Her power rapier's curved hilt echoed the traditions of honor duels on this feudal world. The Neuroshredder blast, even a near miss, had shaken the mercenary badly. Blood dripped from her nose and ear, shimmering against pale skin. "Drop your weapon," Rask growled. Glancing past her, Sycoraxa saw apostolic guards rushing down the corridor, her only escape route. Rask slammed her palm down on an activation room. The double plastisteel doors slammed shut. "Planning to finish me off yourself?" Sycoraxa asked, hoping her Tau accent sounded convincing enough. She hadn't studied it. Improvisation was just a fancy word for bluff. "Maybe," Rask smiled, the first time Sycoraxa had seen it, a smile sharp and sour as vinegar. "Or maybe we come to an agreement. Your master is dead." Rask shrugged. He would have died eventually, anyway. If not by your hands, then by the lords of Terra. Besides, who wants to serve a master when they can rule themselves? Looks like you and the Confessor had a falling out. Good. Open heresy. Giving the planet to the Tau. That'll provoke an imperial invasion. But if we play this right, we both get what we want. You need resources, right? It'll take emergency powers and root out the Xeno spies who killed our beloved Confessor. That'll make me look more legitimate. Meanwhile, every quarter cycle, it'll send you whatever you need. Or Prometheum, workers, to abandoned landing pads in the provinces. You send some human expediters to load the cargo onto ships. No Inquisition or Assassinorum will bother us. How generous, Sycoraxa said. But there's one catch. Im Assassinorum. Force fields clashed, hissing and snapping. Rask parried her strike. Drawing a poisoned stiletto with her free hand, Sycoraxa struck low, but the captain of the guards couldn't defend fully. The weapon bent against Rask's armor, and the mercenary broke the thin blade with a chopping strike. Rask was good to train in the best mercenary academies in the sector. Besides, she fought with a rapier longer than a thrusting phase blade. Sycoraxa's blade was made for ambush and quick strikes, not open combat. None of it would matter if Sycoraxa faced the full force of the guards. But fighting the penitent machines had drained her, and blood loss slowed her movements. She was fast enough only to avoid hits. Rask wielded the rapier with swift precision, deflecting the phase blade in every direction, then raising it high, twisting to lock the blades together by the hilt. If Sycorax's blade weren't made of Xeno material, Rask would have snapped it twice in seconds. Instead, she merely bent her own guard with sharp twists of the rapier. Sycoraxa felt herself pushed back under a storm of counterattacks. Sharp, razor-edged force fields whizzed past her, forcing her to dodge and weave, slipping away from the lunging thrusts of the long rapier. With her left hand, the Calidus parried a stab aimed at her abdomen. Pain sliced through her forearm. The blade tore a ragged groove from elbow to wrist. Her Syntech leather sleeve detected the wound and sealed tight to stop the bleeding. Laughing, the mercenary forced Sycoraxa onto the balcony, pressing her back against a velvet banner hanging from the marble railing. The assassin heard the flickering hum of failing force fields, their generators sputtering on and off. "I know who you are, shapeshifter," Rask snarled. "And the crowds down there don't. Imagine what they'll think when they see me tear apart the Xeno assassin who killed their confessor." Sycoraxa caught the downward strike on the phased blade mount, the rapier plunging deep into sparking circuits. The weapon's hum died out, the power pack went dark, and the blade fully materialized, turning to cold, solid metal. Rask shoved the Calidus back, the locked blades edging her throat. The rapier's force field sparked, and the air reeked of burnt metal. Behind her, the failing force field roared. Pushing all else aside, Sycoraxa stared into the mercenary's eyes and saw horror flash across Maskel's face. The Calidus features melted and shifted, copying the captain's likeness. Every dual scar, every freckle, every wrinkle on her brow. Sycoraxa saw Rask mesmerized, stunned, felt her recoil in disgust, the pressure of the blade easing. Then the assassin made her move. Gripping the lower breastplate, she pulled Rask by the armor while pushing the rapier up. Leaning back so far she nearly broke her spine, Sycoraxa flipped the mercenary over her head, straight into the failing force field. Rask screamed just before the pale blue barriers flashed like a triple guillotine descending. They sliced the body to pieces, cauterized wounds, then vanished again. Sycoraxa released the corpse, and the twitching remains collapsed at her feet. Rask's severed face broke apart centimeter by centimeter, its fragments swirling over the crowd like falling leaves. When the apostolic guards unlocked the doors, they found a mortuary behind. The confessor, identified only by his robes, was dead. One penitent machine destroyed. The captain who had burst in, barking orders, was found dead, her skull scalped. No one knew how the Xeno assassin escaped. Not through the door or balcony. They would have been spotted there, and the ventilation shafts were barely big enough to hold a saltery. Elsewhere, the fighting raged on. The Tau delegation held out for an hour, strangers cutting down anyone who approached their quarters with plasma weapons until rocket launchers arrived. The Tower of St. Gonorilla was unstable, dangerously unreliable. The engineers had done right to seal it off. One wrong step on its crumbling stairs meant death. 6 died just trying to assess the damage. Sycoraxa found herself moving slowly despite her training, skilled in spotting traps like those Vindicare set among ruins. Here, a taut wire leading to a Fletchette mine buried beneath rubble. There, an anti-personnel spike coated in neuroparalytic toxin. Masterful work. All signs of a professional. That was what worried her. The mission had seemed odd from the start. Nothing troubling appeared in the tablet briefing, but after infiltration, Sycorax's doubts grew stronger. She was walking a razor's edge. Posing as a heretic was no sin standard practice under her temple's authority. But sustaining an anti-imperial uprising for months? Unheard of. If not a direct oath breach, then damn close. Had the bullet been meant not just for the confessor, but for her too? Who was the traitor agent here? The Vindicare or herself? The shadowed bell tower watched over the blue twilight, its arches lit by fires raging on the streets below, where industrial magnates fought to reclaim city blocks from panicked followers of the revelation. Sycoraxa immediately spotted the sniper's position, a shelter built from rubble, cleared of stone dust. In the fading light, brass gleamed faintly. Squatting, the Calidus examined the find up close. A spent shell from an Exodus rifle, twice the length of Sycorax's thumb, as wide as a shotgun slug. The empty casing pointed up at the ceiling. She hadn't fallen here. She'd been placed. Vindicares always collected their shells when leaving a position. The Calidus flipped the shell over. Stamped on the primer nest was the image of a skull. She spotted a custom striker's imprint, the one that etched a crosshair on the dead head with every shot. As she examined the casing, a data chip slipped out, about the size of a thumbnail. Almost blown away by a gust, Sycoraxa caught the storage device from the floor. Inserting the chip into her wrist tablet, she initiated the decryption sequence. Runes danced across the screen, then froze, forming two words: Operation Vendetta. The front sight and rear sight Absalom Reed knew how to slit a throat. He was trained and drilled for it. Every step etched into memory like a Vindicator's creed. Strike behind the carotid artery to silence the vocal cords, then pull the knife forward. That's how he earned his dirt bike. Mission log, day 27, 1732. He whispered into the vox laryngophone built into his mask. Initial interception failed. The Jackal pack hit the probable target and, following their standard attack pattern, scattered into narrow alleys. They fled singly or in pairs to hinder pursuit. Survivors are presumed to regroup in the wastelands before moving to the next objective. Reed sharply tilted his dirt bike to ride around the burnt-out Chimera wreck. Charred skeletons of crew members frozen in the rear hatch, unable to escape. He keyed the throat vox again. Ambush tactically successful. As recorded, I set a climbing rope across the alley along the target's likely escape route. The dismounted Jackal Scout was neutralized with a universal blade. He inhaled, forcing professionalism, avoiding any hint of regret in his voice. The main target used an alternate path. Confirmed. Target not destroyed. Repeating, not destroyed. Retrieved dirt bike and clothing of killed scout. Found dust trail of the target. Pursuing. He cut the recording, suppressing a curse. 27 days. The mission dragged on. The target had slipped away too many times. Even Absalom's inhuman patience, honed in the Vindicare Temple, was wearing thin. He wasn't proud of how Head set the trap with the rope or killed the Jackal with a knife, though both were masterful. Reed preferred a clean kill from ambush. Head even gained fame during training for strangulation. Silent and effective, with less risk of staining his mask with blood. Tighten the garrote, cut off air, and the victim has almost no countermeasures. Shake them like a winged game bird, you can break the neck. Pull harder, and you can decapitate if the mission calls for a message. But now Absalom was hunting not humans, though from afar, the silhouettes looked just the same. Genestealer hybrids had thicker, more muscular necks, tight glands making strangling far harder. The monomolecular blade hadn't cut that throat. He had to literally saw through it. Reed would have preferred a clean ambush kill, but was forced into pursuit. A lone rider on a light dirt bike, or across the hard wasteland earth, chasing the dust trail on the horizon. The target, the Jackal Alpha. Absalom was on his 5th mission, and eliminating this last objective would earn him journeyman rank in the art of death. Many assassins died sooner. Losses were part of their craft. Tracking and killing a target on hostile ground, then escaping unnoticed, wasn't easy. Those who succeeded had their names remembered and passed down to new acolytes. Those who failed were forgotten. Most died on the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th mission, shot down, torn apart by artillery, ripped open by demons or nightmarish Xenos, or, God forbid, captured and tortured endlessly. A disgraceful, slow end for an operative trained to bring sudden death. That's why agents often start their field careers with low-level kills to gain experience. Sometimes rookies are assigned to crusades with broad kill orders, naming enemy command and tactically important targets. Work for a journeyman. But after the 5th mission, the game changes. Other targets appear. Farewell to hunting Auk Warbuses in mega armor or cultist leaders. After the 5th mission, you're playing for keeps. Planetary governors, chaos lords, Tau Sept leaders, Archem Agos. The Mechanicus, those who had taken a wrong turn. Key figures from various factions. No longer would mission logs need to be sent to the temple for review. But to get there, you had to survive the deadly 5th mission. Lost in thoughts of promotion, Absalom Reed nearly lost focus. Pulling himself together, he scanned the orange horizon of Govi through his recon mask lenses. Lines of data streamed across the pilgrim pump's balancing arms. 2 hours till sunset, he muttered. Temperatures high even for Govi's wastelands, but still within equipment tolerances. After sunset, it'll drop below freezing. Metal contraction will reduce rifle accuracy over long distances. Govi was a desert planet. No one would settle it without vast promethium deposits. The mining colonies clung stubbornly to life. maintaining the Pilgrim rigs that endlessly pumped precious resources from the scorched earth. Some pumps still bore folk art, images of praying faithful, hands clasped in supplication. But many were stripped to bare, utilitarian frames after the uprising. The Talern 88th Regiment was perfect for deployment here. Reed respected desert raiders, their skill, their dedication to a narrow specialization in a certain kind of violence. But even they hadn't caught the Jackal Alpha. The acid-filled bullets of that creature had pierced the skulls of 26 militarum commanders, from senior officers up to 2 generals. This had disrupted several command headquarters, threatening operations across the continent. The Alpha had planted explosives on one Prometheum field and detonated them as the 88th 2nd Battalion advanced. 40% of the unit was lost in the raging fire. That was when Reed received his orders. He studied the Jackal Alpha's tactics, pinpointed the lieutenant the creature planned to kill next to paralyze another platoon, and set an ambush along the predicted retreat route. That attempt marked Reed's 3rd failure. The target slipped away every time, leaving only dust trails behind the pack. But now he had a fresh lead and was closing in. For a month, he stalked his prey under the scorching sun, among the bowing pilgrims. Today, it would end. Rocks and dirt flew beneath his wheels. Behind him, clothes stripped from a cultist fluttered over his Syntech armor. The cultist's adrenaline-charged blood throbbed in time with the bike's guttural growl. Reed spotted black dots on the horizon through the shimmering heat haze aheads. He keyed his throat vox. Enemy sighted. Taking firing position. There's a Pilgrim pump tower 1.5 kilometers to the north-northeast. In climbing it to find a firing point for a sharp beep sounded in his recon mask. At the edge of his vision, just where alerts could ruin his shot, a red warning flashed. Laser rangefinder exposure. Reed yanked the handlebars, sharply leaning the bike into a slide. Under attack. Under attack. Under attack. He slammed into the ground, but stayed in the saddle. His mask scraped the hardened dirt. Sharp stones tore his right side, shredding cultist rags and Syntech armor. He felt a shard of dune glass under his right foot slice flesh from knee to thigh dot, better than taking a bullet that screamed past just 5 centimeters above his head. Absalom slammed his gloved hand into the ground and kicked his legs back, letting the dirt bike flip forward. He hoped the rising cloud of dust would shield him. Another warning flashed. Rangefinder. The agent rolled left as a bullet slammed into the earth, carving a furrow where the bike had skidded on hard ground. Alphys was skilled, but no match for an assassin. She'd hunted Ostrom Militarum fighters for so long she was used to their counter-sniper tactics. None of the guards, even high-ranking officers, had sensors as advanced as Reed's. His system was so sophisticated that if he died, his mask would self-incinerate its logic core and trigger incendiary capsules in his weapon to prevent capture. But he couldn't count on more than two miraculous escapes. Absalom figured Alphys had already learned the rules of the game. In his mind, the assassin could almost see her pale hand cutting off the rangefinder. To seconds, all the time he had. Then the dust would clear, and the target would have a clear shot. Muscle memory kicked in. His hand found a smoke grenade and clicked the timer before he even thought about it. He threw the grenade left, catching the side wind. A pop. The grenade detonated in 2 stages. First, a flash that blinded the hybrid scope, giving Reed a chance to change position. Then a jet of purple smoke burst from the metal cylinder, opaque even to the most advanced optics, cloaking the assassin like a theater curtain. Countermeasure deployed, moving to firing position. Reed crawled through the veil on his belly, twisting like a snake. Thanks to his mask's enhanced optics, he spotted a shallow depression, one of many crater-like pits dotting the world. Purple smoke curled into the tiniest hollow on the wasteland, just 15 centimeters deep, but enough. Sliding into the depression, Absalom flattened himself against the ground, shouldered his Exodus rifle, and deployed the bipod. Then he pulled a thin wire from his mask and connected it to the scope. Blinking a few times, he checked the optics were properly linked to the device. Pressing his face into the soil, Reed minimized his silhouette, trusting the active camouflage of his suit to render him invisible against the barren landscape. His eyes were now the rifle. Blue sky, orange earth, a perfect horizon line. No place to hide on such flat terrain. Only the Pilgrim pump towers with their long, endlessly swaying balancing arms. The optical sight, calibrated to see through smoke, shifted right. Data columns wavered at the edge of Reed's view. The ballistic computer calculated the trajectory of the hybrid's second shot based on sensors in his recon mask. Got it! A quadrant of the horizon to Absalom's right, tinted pink. He cautiously zoomed in, slightly defocusing to spot any anomalies in the terrain. No surprise the shot came from a cluster of pilgrims, from the very position had planned to take himself. Despite his superior gear, Reed found himself cornered and aware of it. He was on the wrong side of the death equation. Alphas had surely noticed him trailing and slipped into the forest of nodding pump towers to find a firing spot, while the other jackals maneuvered the assassin into the line of fire. She played her hand brilliantly, maybe even deliberately baited Reed into a trap. Mutual contact. Position unfavorable. The target knows my exact location. Alphys holds the high ground and a prepared position. The sun is at her back, scanning for potential target locations in a 200-meter field. A bad start to the sniper duel. The deadly fifth mission. Reed felt no fear, only a problem to solve. His enhanced mind repeated a meditative mantra, steadying his breath. He caressed the rifle's grip. Subdermal connectors sensed with the sensors embedded in its surface, turning the weapon into an extension of his body. The enhanced optics overlaid a grid on the terrain. It analyzed patterns, highlighting platforms and beam joints in yellow, marking areas for closer inspection where shadows lay oddly or tower contours warped. Mentally, Reed cleared half the markers, deciding an alpha-level shooter wouldn't pick such obvious spots. He removed 6 more as false positives, desert wasp nests fooling the optics. The target hadn't fired yet. She was cautious, likely suspecting she was being watched through a scope, ready to give away her position only if she landed a deadly shot or was simply reloading. Reed exhaled slowly, the breath fogging his respirator. He scanned the remaining squares, filtering them through neural implants at the base of his skull. Clean, 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 stop. A shadow lay wrong. It seemed to bulge out behind the bend of 2 main support beams. A dark blot nestled between hot metal and a swollen wasp nest. Reed aimed the crosshairs and squeezed the trigger. He saw a flash, a strike to the skull. His vision dimmed. Hit, blinded. Panic crept into his voice, alien to him. Operator blinded. The enemy had robbed him of his sight, the only thing that mattered. Reed lay motionless in the darkness, his head throbbing with pain. For the first time, he truly knew failure. The deadly 5th mission. But then words appeared in the dark.